In this demonstration you learn how to remove metadata from a blob. This is important because we have a bug in our Coffee Video Admin application. Let's switch to Visual Studio. Here I've started the Coffee Video Admin application. The title and the description are optional values. But the problem is, you can't store an empty string as metadata on a blob. So what happens when we click now on Update Metadata? Then we get an error, the argument must not be an empty string. Let's close this dialog and let's go to our Update Metadata async method in the Coffee Video Storage class. Let's add a breakpoint here and let's bring up the application again. I click again on Update Metadata. Now this Update Metadata async method is called with an empty description. As you can see, in the client you can set that metadata, but as soon as you call the set metadata async method on the Cloud Blob, you will get an exception. That's a storage exception and it says that the argument must not be an empty string. Now let's stop the application again. This means now we can't store empty strings in that metadata. Instead of storing an empty string, we should just remove the key value pair from the metadata. Because in the getBlob metadata method, we check if that key exists, and if it doesn't exist, we return an empty string. This means we need to do the same kind of logic when we set the metadata on our blob. So let's start with the title. Let's just check here if the title is null or whitespace. Also with the whitespace string, you will get the exception that you have just seen. Now if the string is null or whitespace, we can check if the metadata of our Cloud Blob contains the key underscore metadata key title. And if that's the case, we just remove that entry from the metadata. Now if the string is not null or whitespace, we can actually do what we have already. We just store the title under the key title in that metadata. Now we need to do exactly the same logic to set the description. So let's try to refactor this whole code block into a separate method. I press Ctrl dot and I select extract method. And I call the new method set metadata. Let's scroll down and here you can see the new method. Let's rename the title parameter to value, as we want to use this method to set any metadata on this Cloud Blob, like for example also the description. I press Ctrl dot to rename it. Inside the method, we use the underscore metadata key title field. Instead of hardcoding this key here, we should get the key as a parameter. So let's add another parameter here and let's call it key. Now we can replace the usage of the underscore metadata key title field in the method with this new key parameter. And as you might notice, we can also make this method static. Let's scroll up again to the Update Metadata async method, and here where we set the title, we need to pass in the key that we have stored in the underscore metadata key title field. Now let's just copy this line and let's use the underscore metadata key description field for the key and the description parameter for the value. Now we set the title and the description on the Cloud Blob and then we send the metadata to blob storage. Before we run the application, let's cut the set metadata method and let's move it to the end of the Coffee Video Storage class as it is a private method. Now let's run the application and let's check if we don't get an exception anymore when we enter an empty description or an empty title. Let's open up the skateboarder MP4 file and let's remove, for example, the description. Now let's click on Update Metadata. And you see, we don't get an exception anymore. Now let's actually go to the Azure portal and let's take a look at the metadata of the skateboarder MP4 file. So here I've opened the blade of the Coffee Videos container. Let's select the skateboarder MP4 file. Let's scroll down and you can see it has just a title but no description anymore. Now let's bring up the Coffee Video Admin application again. Let's enter again a description and let's call it skateboarding with coffee. I click on Update Metadata and now we can go back to the Azure portal. We refresh this and now you can see the description key comes back with the value skateboarding with coffee. So now we have all the logic in the Coffee Video Admin application to load and store metadata on a blob. The only thing that we need to implement in addition is to set the metadata when a user adds a new video. As you can see, the user can enter here also a title and a description. So let's ensure that this information is also stored on a new blob that is uploaded to blob storage.